bounds.
What is up, guys? Welcome to this edition of Phil Talks Wrestling. I'm Phil, obviously, and this is the first time you're seeing my face, and that's because I wanted to share a personal story with you that was suggested to me by Sean. He's the other dude that comes and does the videos with me sometimes, so I'm going to leave his stuff, his Twitter and stuff in the description below. So thank you, Sean, for this idea. And his question to me was, what got me into wrestling? And I thought this was an awesome idea to do a video on, so I would like to share this experience with you guys. And it actually has two parts to the story, two main parts. So I'm going to start off, and my very first little bite of pro wrestling was when I bought my mom a Christmas card or a Mother's Day card, I forget what it was, with Dwayne The Rock Johnson on it, because Dwayne The Rock Johnson was like one of her favorite celebrities / pro wrestlers. And I remember it was a really shitty card too. It had him on. He was doing the eyebrow thing, and he had like his like a vest on that had like a cow pattern print on it or something like that. So it was kind of strange, but she really liked it. She was a big fan of Dwayne, and she kept that card for years, for as long as I can remember. And she really liked it, and that was like my first little taste of pro wrestling there. And so from there, a kid moved in across the street. His name was Danny, and Danny actually got me into watching SmackDown after I became his friend. So he would come over on Tuesday, whatever night, I think it was Thursday night SmackDown is when they had it, and we would watch SmackDown together, and my mom would cook us dinner. It would usually be like steak and cheeses, and we'd sit down in front of the television, and we would watch SmackDown. And I remember being so mesmerized by these guys because all the stuff that they were doing was just like completely amazing to me for some reason. I would just watch it, I'd be like, wow. Some vivid memories that I have of SmackDown in the early days were like, I remember Big Show, I remember Thuganomics John Cena, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Angle, all those people, Shawn Michaels, Triple H. That's what I remember from SmackDown. And Danny and I would do this every week, pretty much. And that's what got me into it. And I remember for Christmas one year, my mother bought me the Thuganomics John Cena disc set, I believe, and that was really cool. I watched that like over and over again a million times. I subscribed to WWE Magazine. Does that even exist anymore? I'm not sure, but I subscribed to WWE Magazine at the time. It was pretty cool. I was one of those kids that would like go on their beds and like do like wrestling moves to stuffed animals and stuff like that. But I also had a box of wrestling figures and a small little wrestling figure ring thing. And I remember just playing with those on hours on end. Now, when I was 7 years old, sadly my mother passed away, and I had to move up with my dad, right? So I moved up with my dad, and I was also living with my grandparents as well, because it was their house and my dad was living with them. So my grandparents still are extremely anti-pro wrestling, and my dad could really care less. He kind of likes it, actually. But my grandparents are very influential upon people's decision-making. So they got it in my dad's head that I shouldn't be watching wrestling, and from that day forth, he was like, oh, yeah, Phil, you're not watching wrestling. So I remember I brought this tub of wrestlers up to the house, and I grieved for like a month or two. I remember one day I'm like, wow, I really miss wrestling. I want to play with my wrestlers. So I go looking for this white tub, and of course my parents play the act of, oh, we didn't see any tub of wrestlers. What are you talking about? You never brought that up with you. And my dad was like, yeah, Phil, I didn't really see any wrestlers here. I was like, okay, that's weird. So I went searching for them on my own, and I couldn't find them. So I gradually got out of wrestling because I just got like, I don't know, disinterested, and my parents like talked me out of it every time I tried to bring it up. So I was like, whatever. But later on, I want to say like 6 years later, 7, I was helping my dad move some stuff, and in the storeroom, I found the white Tupperware container that my wrestlers used to be stored in, except this time they were being used as storage for some of my dad's movie collection. So I snapped. I kind of went a little bit crazy. I was so mad, because at that point it had just been confirmed for me that my parents threw out these wrestlers that I had worked so hard to collect, and that my mom had given me. and I was really mad. So I reamed out my parents and my grandparents for it, or my dad and my grandparents for it. They continued to deny it. It's still bullshit to this day. I still know that they throw them out, no matter how much they want to deny it. I know they did it. But from that day forth, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna watch wrestling again. And so my parents were still kind of anti-wrestling at that point. So I would like come home from like school, and I would sneak in episodes of TNA Impact Wrestling on demand because that was the only thing I could find. And I got into it. I liked Abyss, AJ Styles, obviously. This was like at the end of the Fortune Immortal storyline, beginning of Aces and Eights storyline. So I watched through that. Got really into it. I thought it was pretty cool, right? But I got really back into it. That's what got me back into it. And I remember still like ordering some TNA shirts and stuff like that without my parents knowing. It was kind of funny, actually. But one day they like caught me watching it, and they were like, you know what, Phil, do what you want. You can watch wrestling. We don't really care anymore. So I was like, sweet. I finished TNA because I just got disinterested after the Aces and Eights storyline, and that was around the time when I got a newer iPod. I have an iPhone now, but that was around the time that I got a new iPod, so I would spend my nights watching wrestling matches, and I would go back all the way back to the 80s, and I would watch through all the great wrestling moments. I would watch the stuff that I missed, so like the episodes of SmackDown that I missed, I would watch. Episodes of Raw that I missed, I would watch. And the first episode of Raw that I watched when I came back was actually CM Punk versus John Cena! At the end of the Summer of Punk storyline. It's the one where CM Punk got in a lot of trouble for pile driving John Cena, and Vince McMahon lost his brains. That still happens now. But so that's what really got me back into wrestling, and the rest is history now. I mean, I got really into it. I now have my own wrestling Twitter, which you can go follow in the link below. I have my own wrestling YouTube channel now that I'm working so hard on, and I'm going to college for media studies, which I can hopefully incorporate with wrestling somehow. Maybe be like a wrestling reporter or something like that. Maybe a WWE correspondent or something like that. That would be super cool. I would love to learn how to wrestle someday. Maybe not for WWE, but for like small promotions. I'd like to get in shape for that. Just something that I've always kind of wanted to do. But yeah, that is basically my wrestling story. So from like all the way back when I was 6, starting watching those SmackDown tapes. Oh, I forgot to mention, my first pay-per-view that I ever watched was, and it's still vivid in my memory today, is SummerSlam 2002. And I remember watching the Shawn Michaels Triple H match where Shawn just returned and Triple H fucking clocks Shawn Michaels in the back with a sledgehammer. I thought it was like the most brutal thing I've ever seen because like they were all bleeding, and it was like some of the first hardcore stuff that I ever watched. And I also remember during that pay-per-view, Kurt Angle versus Rey Mysterio. It was right near the time that Rey Mysterio debuted. And I also remember, I believe it was on that pay-per-view, Chris Jericho versus Ric Flair. And I think that was a feud that was going on there. But that's still one of my favorite pay-per-views. Today I rewatched that after I got back into wrestling. I'm like, wow, this is really what got me into it after SmackDown. But basically, that is how I got into wrestling, and from there it's history. I really hope to do something with wrestling in the future in my college degree, and it's just a big part of my life, and I just thought it would be awesome to share it with you guys. So thank you guys so much for listening to my story about how I got into wrestling. If you'd like to hear more stories, just let me know, and I will most definitely do them. And as always, thank you guys for watching this edition of Phil Talks Wrestling. I'm Phil, and make sure they stay down for the 3 count.
What's your favorite match?
My favorite match was with Melina and Alicia Fox.